Hey, good evening. We're going to start here in a second. 3, 2, 1. Good evening. My name is Jarrin Jackson. I am the America First candidate for the Republican runoff in Oklahoma State Senate District Number 2. The runoff election is August 23rd. My number is 918-845-9555. We do these streams at 7 p.m. Central Time so that you get to hear about me as a candidate and the ideas that I have, the stuff that I would do as a state senator, and give you the opportunity to call in, ask questions, comments, concerns, whatnot. You can help the campaign here at JacksonOklahoma.com/donate, JacksonOklahoma.com/donate. And then last administrative note, we have a meet and greet August 11 at King Road Baptist Church. It is right there at 6 o'clock in the evening time to 9 o'clock. We'll leave that up right there. This evening, I want to talk about food supply, food chain, specifically as it relates to eminent domain, as it relates to what I believe is a subversive technique to currently and continually undermine America's ability to feed itself. I wanted to bring this. Someone in the comments last week brought up this article right here from the New American. It says, Iowa's gearing up to fight Agenda 2030 inspired carbon capture pipelines. Now, as always, I am on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, platforms that will censor, so I'm going to not say things smoothly because I have to translate in order to not get canceled on platforms. That is in itself a commentary. This article right here is about Iowa having carbon capture pipelines underneath the ground. These carbon capture pipelines are designed to liquefy CO2, transport it rapidly underneath the ground so as to limit emissions in the atmosphere. The first thing I have to talk about here is the premise. I am a big premise guy. I always try to go back to first principles. In the Latin, the word is principium. How do you begin your thinking? From an epistemological perspective, how do you know what you know? For me, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I want to tell more people about the gospel of Jesus Christ than anything else. Because I'm a Bible-believing Christian, I believe the Bible. And so whenever people talk to me about climate change, whenever people advance this idea that man-made global warming or climate change is a really big problem, I want to refer them to two places. Those two places, again, I am a Bible-believing Christian, so I'm going to refer to the scriptures. This is, I want to say, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. We'll do this quickly, then we'll talk about the laws. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 10 says, quote, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works there are therein shall be burned up." So God will destroy the planet. God will destroy the heavens. Revelation chapter 21 verse 1, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." God's going to destroy stuff, not man. God's going to destroy everything, not man. Do not grant the premise to climate change being man-made to going to destroy everything. If you do that, you lose all subtext. You lose the entire philosophical grounding for legislation. Now, there are those people who would then argue, do you just care about nothing? Do you just want to destroy the planet? That is a straw man. That is a moralistic preening tactic to get people to undermine your position. My position is Genesis chapter 1 verse 28, which gets back to, "And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." I am a Bible-believing Christian. I'm going to ground my beliefs in the scripture. I do not believe in man-made climate change. I believe in God destroying the planet. With that, let's talk about what this article is talking about right here, and that is carbon capture pipelines. Carbon capture pipelines. The idea is that if CO2 gets into the ozone, it's got greenhouse effects that's going to warm everything up, and because of man's activity, this theory goes, that's going to rise the sea tides, melt the ice caps, kill the polar bears, and everything else. Notwithstanding the fact that most of the politicians pushing this live on the coast in big fancy mansions, we have to look at the legislative agenda. There are private companies using eminent domain to put landowners in Iowa, farmers in Iowa, food producers in Iowa into a position where they lose their farms, and what goes underneath the ground is toxic gas. CO2 is not good for you to breathe in, especially in high concentrated doses. So the carbon capture pipelines are what's going here, but the main issue at stake is food supply, the food chain. America has lots of different states, lots of different production, lots of different agriculture. It's a big deal. We can feed the world in America, and we should. The America First agriculture policy should be America should be feeding the world. Shouldn't be McDonald's, shouldn't be Walmart. It should be the average American farmer is feeding the world. That's the objective. That's the ideal. I will certainly fight for that as the America First candidate in this Oklahoma State Senate District Number 2 race. But the issue at play is food chain, food supply. Again, we go back to Dobbs v. Jackson, which was the Supreme Court landmark decision that happened a month ago that overturned Roe v. Wade. Dobbs v. Jackson. It's called Dobbs because Dobbs was found in favor of. This is the Supreme Court precedent. Let me fix my O. Dobbs v. Jackson basically says we're going to get back to a constitution, and if the constitution does not empower the federal government to do something, then the federal government doesn't have the power to do that. As your state senator, I will be on the prowl to look at what the Constitution says, what the federal government is doing that the Constitution doesn't allow it to do, and then file legislation or encourage local law enforcement officials to nullify that. Number one is to nullify federal action. Nullify means we're not going to do it. If I tell my kid to do something and the kid says no, well, I'm the parent, I can make him do that. The federal government is not our parent. The federal government is not in charge. The federal government is the entity responsible for defending the Constitution, and the Constitution limits what the federal government can do. The federal government does not have the power to have an environmental protection agency. The federal government does not have the power to have the USDA, the FDA. They do not have that power, and so as your state senator, I'm looking at the Constitution. I recognize the federal government is exercising powers and authorities it's not granted in the Constitution, and you legislate against that. You educate against that. You nullify against that. Put simply, farmers and producers need to be deregulated. They need to be unleashed. People who have price fixing or price control cartel activities don't need to be influencing Oklahoma farmers. But I'll go one step further. Here in Catoosa, in this district right here, we have the Port of Catoosa. It's the only port in Oklahoma. That's right, Oklahoma has a port. We need, I believe, to put money into the port to dredge it, make it deeper so you can have heavier barges, more traffic, more in, more out. I believe that we need to be exporting our food, be having a deregulated and nullified federal government, unleash your agriculture producers, and then go from there. I want to talk about the eminent domain, though, because this article that was sent to me by someone in this that's watching, this article right here, the carbon capture pipelines, there's another component to this. Again, so you have what I believe is the false premise of man-made climate change going to destroy the planet. I don't believe that. I believe the Bible speaks directly against that. So once you grant that premise, you go down a dangerous path. What this company is doing, what this private company in Iowa is doing, is using eminent domain. Let's do a pull quote here. It says this is just talking about the pipelines. I don't really want to argue that. That's for another time. Here is the letter sent by the private company. You can read the highlighted portion. It says, "Our goal." This is a private company, by the way. Private company is saying, "Our goal is to reach voluntary agreements with all landowners along the project route. Though if we are unable to do so, we may need to request the right of eminent domain condemnation from the board." And so that caught my attention because now I want to know that I know what eminent domain is in the state of Oklahoma. The last pull quote from this says that, talks about the COT capture, how people are against it. And then the bottom line, it kind of tries to justify it. It says we're going to prevent 12 million tons of CO2 every year, the equivalent of moving 2.6 million vehicles from our road annually. Again, the issue here is not, in my view, the issue is not the man-made destruction of the planet. It's more about the tactical situation of conserving our planet. I am all for conservation. I am all for Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. Look it up. Amen. What I'm not for is using private companies to seize private ownership. See, in Oklahoma, let's get to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's statutes, you've got Title 27 talks about eminent domain. Specifically, the very first rendering, the purpose of eminent domain in Oklahoma says, quote, the lands set apart for the use of the benefit of the state of Oklahoma for public schools, public buildings, educational institutions, either by congressional enactment, executive reservation, goes on and on. It talks about this, it can be, private property can be condemned and seized for sewers, railroads, sidetracks, station grounds, and other municipal or corporate public uses, and all the lands of this state with reference to the taking of private property for public use are hereby made applicable to said lands. And therein lies the issue. The purpose of eminent domain in Oklahoma is to take private ownership by various methods for public use. Of private property for public use. These green or these carbon capture pipelines, in my view, are not public use. They're private entity. And so as your state senator, you need to understand your property rights have a very specific relevance to eminent domain. There's a specific procedure. The Attorney General is supposed to give you your bill of landowners' rights. And what I would do, looking into this Title 27, is I would rebuff it. I would bolster it. I would look to legislate and add to property rights in Oklahoma, because what's going on, and here's the rub. The people who want the carbon capture pipelines, because they grant the premise of man-made climate change going to destroy the planet, they will push through private entity the need to seize, whether it's by voluntary agreement or by use of eminent domain, land, farming, agriculture land. Not only does that reduce our capacity to produce, not only does that threaten our food supply and food chain, not only does that hurt farmers and producers here in my district, but what it really gets at is it gets at reframing rights as being subjective to someone's belief in the future. So if someone believes that the world's going to die and going to be destroyed because of man-made global warming, then people could offer solutions that are designed to solve those future problems. And if those future problems are solved by the usurpation and the destruction of your rights, then by the definition, the government would facilitate the confiscation and the destruction of your property rights to facilitate the use of this eminent domain. Does that make sense? A private company wants to put a carbon capture pipeline. It's not sewers, it's not water, it's not municipal use, it's not a public use. It's a private use to facilitate the solvency for a man-made climate change. The threat of your property rights is that pointing people to 200, 300, 400 years in the future, that everything's going to be destroyed and that we have to limit the CO2 in the ozone. What we've just done is we've inverted the paradigm from I own this property and it's protected by government because God gave it to me. We've now inverted it to where if the government believes it must save people 400 years from now, it will take your property today. That's the issue. So for agriculture, for producers, you got to deregulate, you got to nullify the USDA, the FDA, look at Article 1, Section 8. If the Congress doesn't have the power authorized to it by the Constitution, and the federal government's doing something it's not authorized to do, you nullify it, you legislate against it. For eminent domain, the eminent domain in Oklahoma must be used for public use. I would argue heavily that carbon capture pipelines not only are dangerous with its concentrated poisonous toxic gas, not only is it subversive to our current industry, agriculture, farming, everything like that, but I would say that it's not justified to undermine rights today for the promise of something tomorrow. You got to be very careful about this. Make sure that you elect someone that understands the interplay of all these dynamics and these ideas, because they're being sold to us under a bill of goods, a climate agenda, a green agenda, the 2020 or 2030 green agenda. This is my phone, 918-845-9555, 918-845-9555. You can call or text in. Preference would go for in-district people. I'm going to ask if you are in district. It's all right if you're not in district. I would prefer you to be in district, seeing as how I'm doing this for the voters that I want to represent and not for people who aren't from the district. So with that, you can call in, text in. If not, as a way of reminder, we're going to have a meet and greet on August 11 right here. I'll stand right here. We're going to have a meet and greet on August 11 at King Road Baptist Church. You are more than welcome. It's open to the public. You can come. We'll talk about the Constitution. We'll talk about the race. I'll ask for your vote. You can get to know me on a personal level. You want to shake my hand, do whatever. We can talk about Jesus. Absolutely. We can talk about whatever you want. With that, I've got nobody calling. I always try to like to keep it less than 20 minutes. And as a result of that, please share this to people who are in the district. If you are a voter and you know somebody who's going to participate or want to vote in this election, in this runoff on August 23rd, please share this to them. Please let them know that by God's grace, I'll be doing this 7 o'clock every evening. Probably going to go to church on Wednesday, and we're not going to do it on Sunday. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings, we'll be doing this. And with that, I'm open for questions. I'm open for texts. I don't have anybody, so you can have that. I monitor this all time. This phone is always on me. This phone is always on me. I might not answer it because I might be on it. But with that, I appreciate your time. God bless you. I ask if you are in the district. I ask for your vote. If I have your support, please get in contact with me right here. If you want to help volunteer, call other people, knock doors, do whatever. I appreciate your help, appreciate your vote. God bless you. If you want to help, every dollar donated goes to pushing this message and getting me into office, the Oklahoma State Senate. I am Jarrin Jackson, the America First candidate for the Republican runoff in Oklahoma State Senate District number 2. I appreciate your time. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Till then, I'm Jarrin Jackson. I love America. Have a good day.